Wow, what an interesting story by Allen Hughes of Minister Society. I know I was kind of late with it, but it still was kind of like, wow, to think about in hindsight that R. Kelly originally had written Bump and Grind for the character of Kane and Jada Pinkett's character, Ronnie, um, for that movie. And to hear Allen Hughes say that he called Barry Weiss, the president of Jive Records, and said R. Kelly got his first number one song. I heard it last night, and then Weiss heard it, and he said, "I got good news, bad news." On one hand, you right, but it's not gonna be that one. We're gonna give you Honey Love with R. Kelly in public announcement. Think, wow. Now, separate the two, as I always do. There's no doubts R. Kelly is one of the greatest artists ever. Songwriter, producer, arranger, composer for his own, his body of work, etc. Personal issues, he has to set up and with his maker, etc. But the songs and the talent speak for themselves. Bump and Grind is one of my favorite songs of the last 30 plus years. The How It Feels gospel remix version, when he goes off on that cadence. But for me, the opening line is always something it's probably one of my favorite quotes to ever start a song. My mind's telling me no, my mind is telling me no, but my body's telling me yes. I mean, and that's what Kane's character with Jada was doing in the film because he didn't want to leave Purnell and take Ronnie with him back to Atlanta. He had all that conflict because Purnell was like a father figure. He was an older brother. He struggled with that in his mind. Now, what's that tell you about R. Kelly's talent level? Because no matter what you think about him, the cat could write songs. The guy can write songs flat out. And he did soundtracks. I mean, obviously there was a little thing called Space Jam and a little bit called I Believe I Can Fly. You may have heard a 5 or 6 or 7 thing about it before. But to hear this about Bump and Grind, that's what he composed just watching it on view, that shows you something else because that became a legendary song. And a trademark of his. So, it's when you hear these stories, you have to, it kind of takes you back because it's like, wow, this cat was just, you know, he had it like that. You kind of, and I like hearing stories about how artists are inspired, especially when they come up with their best stuff. This is one of his most legendary songs, you know. And then he went off on that vocal run on the How It Feels remix. I mean, that version, it still sends chills because that was him almost channeling Wilson Pickett. I mean, that's that 60s souls of him and that early 70s soul of him that's the reason, one of the main reasons why I rolled and messed with Kells musically, because when he goes off like that, you feel it. And there's no doubts in the imagination. So from a filmmaking perspective, to actually compose a song and to put it like that and to have Allen Hughes recall it because those storylines. I mean, that's why artists get commissioned to write for film. Can you put something that will detail and reflect? That is an art within an art because not only are you told to come up with a hit song to be featured on the said soundtrack and everything like that, but then also have a song that reflects the characters. So he was right before the whole Trap in the Closet and the whole Mr. Biggs and that whole sagas and his R&B hip hop operas with him and Kelly Price and Shantae Moore with Contagious and all that stuff he did. This is where it started. So he already had themes in his mind, and that just adds to his musical greatness, which is again sad because of how circumstances have become with choices and decisions. However, it takes not away from the creativity. So this was a very intriguing story to hear Allen Hughes talking about how R. Kelly's Bump and Grind was originally supposed to be for Menace Society. Honey Love did work in that background scene because with the Something's in Your Eyes and how that used as the background play. But to hear that story about Bump and Grind and how that was and how big that song was, because it was once upon a time one of the longest running R&B songs. And that's when he was at the peak of his early powers. But he, had a strong decade plus run. So anyway, let me know what you think about that story to Allen Hughes talking about Bump and Grind. And it was almost used for Menace to Society. Please hit like, subscribe, welcome thoughts, comments, and I do respond. Thank you. Wash your hands, keep your mind clear. Watch out for another. Share it if you like. Stay safe, stay blessed, stay woke, stay free. I'm out one time. Peace.